If I'd been in less of a hurry, I might have missed it. A still warm apple pie sitting on my doorstep at dawn, with a note that felt like it had been waiting 30 years to find me. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in Millbrook, Oregon, and I was already running late for my shift at the bookstore. The morning paper had just landed with a soft thud on the porch. The November air, sharp and clean, bit at my bare ankles as I stepped out in my fuzzy slippers and Dad's old flannel. And there it was, a perfect apple pie on my welcome mat, steam ghosting from its vents, with a note tucked under the ribbon like a secret waiting to be discovered. If you've ever found something on your doorstep that absolutely shouldn't be there, you know that peculiar mix of confusion and curiosity I felt. The pie was beautiful. Golden lattice crust with sugar crystals that caught the porch light, steam still curling from the vents. It smelled like cinnamon and butter and... was that a hint of cardamom? My stomach growled, reminding me I'd skipped dinner again last night, too tired after inventory to do more than fall into bed. But it was the note that made my hands shake as I picked it up. Written in careful cursive on cream-colored paper were the words, "For Rosalie, because some gifts take 30 years to return. Thank you for the sandwich." I read it 3 times, my breath fogging in the cold air. Rosalie. Nobody had called me that in decades. I'd been Rose since college, trying to sound more professional, more grown up. But when I was 7 years old, living in this same house with my grandmother, I'd been Rosalie. The sandwich. What sandwich? I carried the pie inside, setting it on Gran's old kitchen table, the one with the burn mark from when I'd tried to iron my doll's dress directly on the wood. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the lavender sachets Gran kept in every drawer, even though she'd been gone 2 years now. I'd inherited the house and everything in it, including, apparently, mysterious pie deliveries. My phone buzzed. Garrett from the bookstore. "Opening in 10. Where are you?" I should have left the pie, grabbed my coffee, and raced to work. Instead, I found myself pulling out a knife and cutting a small slice. Just a taste. The first bite made me close my eyes. Tart apples, brown sugar, that definitely cardamom spice, and something else. Nutmeg, maybe? It was, without question, the best apple pie I'd ever tasted. And familiar. Somehow, familiar. "Be there in 20, I texted back. Something came up. I sat at the table, eating pie for breakfast like a responsible adult, trying to remember. A sandwich. 30 years ago, I would have been 7. That was the year Mom left, the year Dad worked 3 jobs, the year Gran became my whole world. But a sandwich? The morning light filtered through Gran's lace curtains, casting patterns on the wall. I could almost see her there, flower in her silver hair, humming while she rolled out pie dough. "Rosalie," she'd say, "kindness is like seeds. You plant them and forget, but somewhere, some way they grow." The memory surfaced not like a wave, but like a single clear bubble rising through murky water. Mrs. Kowalski. The name landed in my mind with the solid certainty of a stone. The old woman who lived 3 streets over. The one all the kids said was a witch because she wore long black coats and muttered to herself in Polish. I'd been walking home from school November, just like now. She'd been sitting on the cold green slats of the bus bench, shivering without a coat, her shoulders hunched against a wind that wasn't there. She was counting a few meager coins in her palm, the faint clink-clink the only sound besides the rustling of dry leaves skittering across the pavement. 7-year-old me had stopped, the way kids do when they see something interesting. "Are you okay?" I'd asked. She'd looked at me with tired eyes. "I am just hungry," she'd said in accented English. "But is okay. I wait for Czech to come tomorrow." I'd had my lunchbox with me. Gran always packed too much. Without thinking, I'd pulled out my sandwich, peanut butter and Gran's homemade strawberry jam, cut in triangles the way I liked. "Here," I'd said. "Gran says sharing makes food taste better." Mrs. Kowalski's eyes had filled with tears. She'd taken the sandwich with shaking hands, murmuring, "Dziękuję, Rosalie, dziękuję." I'd skipped home, proud of myself, and told Gran what I'd done. She'd hugged me tight and made me another sandwich for dinner. I never saw Mrs. Kowalski at the bus stop again, and honestly, I'd forgotten all about it, until now. But Mrs. Kowalski would be, what, in her 90s now? Could she have made this pie? No, she'd be in her 90s. Still, that pie plate felt like it belonged to someone who expected it back. And that thought sent me walking, work clothes and all, straight toward a street I hadn't visited in decades. I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years, and decided to investigate. The pie plate was nice, too nice to be disposable. White ceramic with tiny blue flowers painted around the rim. Maybe if I found who it belonged to. I started with the obvious, walking to Mrs. Kowalski's old house 3 streets over. A young family lived there now, kids' toys scattered across the lawn. The mother who answered the door had never heard of Mrs. Kowalski. "Sorry," she said, shifting a baby on her hip. "We've only been here 5 years, but maybe try Mrs. Patterson next door. She's lived here forever." Mrs. Patterson was indeed ancient, tending to her roses despite the November chill. She remembered Mrs. Kowalski immediately. "Oh, Stella, lovely woman. She passed about 15 years ago, dear, but her granddaughter visits sometimes. What was her name? Anya. That's it. Anya Kowalski. She's a baker now, has that new place downtown." The Grateful Table? My heart skipped. A baker. Of course. The Grateful Table had opened 6 months ago, and I'd been meaning to try it but never found the time. Could the granddaughter know about a sandwich from 30 years ago? Downtown Millbrook was just waking up as I parked in front of the Grateful Table. The shop was adorable, painted warm yellow with a hand-carved wooden sign. Through the window, I could see display cases full of pastries and bread, and there, behind the counter, a woman about my age with dark hair and a flour-dusted apron. The bell chimed as I entered, and the smell hit me immediately. Yeast and cinnamon and coffee and cardamom. Definitely cardamom. The woman looked up and smiled. "Good morning. What can I—" She stopped, studying my face. Are you Rosalie?" I nodded, suddenly unable to speak. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was hoping the pie would help you remember. I'm Anya, Stella Kowalski's granddaughter." "The sandwich," I managed. "The sandwich," she confirmed, coming around the counter. "Babshia, my grandmother, she talked about you until the day she died. The little girl with the strawberry jam sandwich who saved her." "Saved her?" Anya gestured to a small table by the window, her hands still dusted with a fine coat of flour. We sat, the morning sun streaming in. "My babchia, my grandmother," she began, her voice soft. She'd just gotten word that her pension had been cut. She was choosing between food and medication, too proud to ask for help. That day at the bus stop, she'd used her last coins for the bus to the food bank, but it was closed. She was going to have to wait until the next day. She paused, pulling out a tissue. "Your sandwich. It wasn't just food, it was hope. A reminder that kindness existed. She made it home, called my mother in Chicago, finally asked for help. Mom moved her in with us the next week." "All from a sandwich?" "All from a sandwich, and a 7-year-old who saw someone hungry and did something about it." Anya smiled through her tears. "Babshia taught me to bake. Every recipe, she'd tell me the story again. 'Remember, Rosalie,' she'd say. 'Remember that kindness matters.' When she passed, she left me her recipes and her stories and a mission." "A mission?" Anya stood, walking to a bookshelf in the corner. She pulled down a leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. She kept track. Everyone who ever helped her, every kindness. She spent her last years returning them all, teaching me to do the same. You were the only one we couldn't find. Rose Thompson. So many in Oregon. But then, She flipped to a page covered in Polish writing and one English sentence. Rosalie, granddaughter of the lavender sachet lady on Maple Street. Last month, I was at the estate sale on Maple. The lady running it mentioned the owner's granddaughter had inherited the house. Rosalie, she said. Not Rose. I knew it had to be you. I thought of Gran, her lavender sachets, her lessons about kindness being seeds. She would have loved this, I said softly. There's more, Anya said, returning to the table. Babcia's apple pie recipe, the one I left this morning? She created it the week after you gave her that sandwich. She said she wanted to make something that tasted like unexpected kindness. That cardamom? She added it because it reminded her of warmth when you're cold. The nutmeg for comfort. Every spice has a meaning. She pushed the journal across to me. This is for you. Her recipes, her stories. She wanted the girl with the sandwich to have them. I opened the journal randomly, finding a page titled Rosalie's Kindness Pie in shaky handwriting. Below it, in Polish and broken English, the story of a hungry grandmother and a 7-year-old's sandwich. I can't take this, I protested. You have to, Anya said firmly. It's what she wanted. Besides, she gestured around the bakery. I have them all memorized. This place? It's built on Babcia's recipes and the lesson you taught her. That kindness, especially from strangers, can change everything. We talked for 2 hours. About her grandmother, about my gran, about the weird ways life circles back. Anya told me how Stella had spent her last years doing exactly what I'd done, sharing food with anyone who needed it, teaching Anya that feeding people was about more than food. She'd take pierogies to new mothers, soup to sick neighbors, bread to anyone who looked tired, Anya laughed. The Polish grandmother feeding the entire neighborhood. She said she was paying forward a sandwich with interest. As I got up to leave, Anya boxed up 6 pastries. For the bookstore, she said. I know Garrett loves bear claws. How do you... I deliver to the coffee shop next door. Small town, everyone talks. She smiled. Plus, Babcia's journal has a whole section on local businesses that were kind to her. Garrett's grandfather apparently gave her store credit during a tough winter in '82. The connections were dizzying. All these threads of kindness woven through decades, connecting strangers who didn't even know they were part of the same tapestry. I made it to the bookstore by noon, bear claws in hand, to find Garrett had handled the morning rush alone without complaint. Family emergency? He asked, concerned. Something like that, I said, handing him a bear claw. A 30-year-old emergency that finally got resolved. That evening, I sat at Gran's kitchen table with Stella Kowalski's journal, reading recipes that were more like love letters. Bread for forgiveness, soup for sorrow, cookies for celebration. And on every page, stories of kindness returned. One entry stopped me cold. Today I met Emma at the market. She was counting coins like I used to. I remembered Rosalie and bought her groceries. She cried. I told her about the sandwich, about how kindness comes back. She promised to remember. The circle continues. Emma. I knew an Emma. She worked at the flower shop, always had a smile despite being a single mom to 3 kids. Had Stella helped her too? My mind raced. How many people in this town were connected by invisible threads to that one sandwich? The next morning, I was at the grateful table when it opened. I need to order pies, I told Anya. Lots of pies. She grinned. Paying it forward? With interest, I confirmed. We spent the morning planning. Pies for the food bank, pies for the elderly neighbors I'd been meaning to check on, pies for the overwhelmed parents at the school where my friend taught. Each with a note. For you, because kindness comes back around. Pass it on when you can. That first delivery day, I felt like a secret Santa in November. Mrs. Rivera, who'd been caring for her sick husband alone, cried when she found the pie. The Nguyen's, new to town and homesick, invited me in for tea. Mr. Bradley, whose wife had just passed, held the pie like it was precious gold. "How did you know?" he asked. "Today would have been our anniversary." I hadn't known. But maybe that was the point. You never know when your kindness will arrive at exactly the right moment. Within a week, things started happening. Mrs. Rivera's daughter sent cookies to the nurses at the hospital. The Nguyen's began teaching free English classes at the library. Mr. Bradley started woodworking again, making free canes for seniors who needed them. Emma from the flower shop found me at the bookstore one afternoon. She was holding a single, perfect white rose. "It was you, wasn't it? The pie?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "The note had the same feel as the one Mrs. Kowalski left for me 5 years ago." I tried to deny it, but she hugged me tight. She helped me when I was counting coins at the grocery store, just like she used to. She told me about a little girl and a sandwich. Said kindness was meant to be passed on. I've been leaving flowers on random doorsteps ever since. The secret was out, but instead of ending things, it amplified them. The grateful table became kindness headquarters. People would drop off notes about neighbors who needed help. Anya would bake, I'd deliver, and the circle kept growing. 3 months later, I was rushing again, seems I'm always rushing, when I nearly tripped over something on my doorstep. Another pie, this one pumpkin with a note. "For Rose, because you gave my mom hope when she had none. The flowers she left on doorsteps included mine during my divorce. Your kindness sandwich has fed more people than you'll ever know. Grace." I sat on my porch steps, pie warm in my lap, and cried. Happy tears, Gran would have called them, the kind that water the seeds of kindness you planted and forgot about. Inside, I cut a slice of pie and opened Stella's journal to a page I'd read a dozen times. Remember, we are all connected by invisible threads of kindness. One sandwich becomes a pie, becomes a flower, becomes hope. This is how we save each other, one small gesture at a time. That afternoon, I baked my first pie using Stella's recipe. It wasn't perfect. The crust was a little lopsided, the lattice uneven. But it smelled like cinnamon and cardamom and possibility. I delivered it to the new family that had moved in down the street, the ones looking overwhelmed by boxes and 3 young kids. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said. "The grateful table sends its regards." The woman's eyes filled with tears. We weren't expecting... Thank you." As I walked home, the evening air turning crisp again, I passed the bus stop where it all began. A sturdy new bench sat where the old green one had been. Curious, I brushed away a few stray autumn leaves from a small bronze plaque I'd never noticed. I bent closer to read it. "In memory of Stella Kowalski, who taught us that kindness is the only currency that multiplies when you spend it." Below that, in smaller letters, "And for Rosalie, who started it all with a sandwich." The November air was cold, but I felt warm all the way through. Somewhere Gran was smiling. Somewhere Stella was too. And somewhere in Millbrook, Oregon, someone was cutting into a pie, reading a note, and discovering that they weren't alone. The circle continues. The seeds grow. The sandwich I'd forgotten about had fed a town. And on my doorstep the next morning, a loaf of bread, still warm with a note. "For Rosalie, because stories like yours remind us why we bake. The Tuesday Morning Bread Club." I laughed, carrying it inside. Apparently, I'd need a bigger kitchen table. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what Gran's house had been waiting for all along. The threads of kindness, it turns out, weave the strongest net, one that catches us when we're falling and lifts us up to catch others in turn. It all started with a 7-year-old who saw someone hungry and did the only thing that made sense. She shared. Because sometimes the smallest gestures echo the loudest across time. And sometimes, if you're very, very lucky, they come back as pie. Gran used to say kindness was like seeds. You never knew when they'd bloom. 30 years ago, mine looked like a peanut butter sandwich. This week it looked like pie, bread, and a town full of people quietly planting seeds of their own.